Hey, and welcome back to Season 2, Episode 4 of the Leading Adam podcast. Today, Adam and I get to talk with Danny Curry, the VP of Leader Development for a local Chick-fil-A franchise, and we are super excited to have you join us today. Lots of nuggets to take with you. Stay tuned.
The Leading Adam podcast is hosted by me, Adam Binkerd. I've spent the last 10 years researching how a healthy human experience is the key to innovation in student retention and education. And now I'm taking to the mic to share what I've learned. Hear how I've defied the odds and transformed from a landscaper to a national expert in student success in less than 10 years. Not an educator? That's okay. Stay tuned for entertaining stories and practical takeaways about leading self, leading leaders, and leading culture. The Leading Adam podcast is co-hosted by Erika Crabtree, produced by Chris Spangle, and sponsored by 240 Solutions. Connect with us at 240solutions.com. And I hope you'll stay tuned because together we can change the world.
Hey, Adam, good morning.
Good morning, Erika. It's good to be back.
It is.
It's been a while since we've been in studio, and I was excited to get back in studio, especially with our guest this morning.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have Season 2. We're all about the guest experience,
Yes.
which is fantastic.
Yeah, well, it just changes the dynamic, having people in and being able to talk about what does leading humanity look like in a variety of contexts. And we've had some good ones so far in Season 2, and we've got some good ones coming in Season 2.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, super excited to dive in. And we've got someone here today that I think, especially if you have kids, you're pretty familiar with the organization.
yeah, I think our guests will feel right at home in this one.
I think so.
I really am excited. So episode 4.
Episode 4.
And so you ready? Let's get into it, yeah?
Let's do it.
So our guest this morning is Danny Curry, who is the Vice President of Leader Development for one of the highest performing Chick-fil-A's in the world. And so if you, as Erika said, if you are a parent, you're familiar with Chick-fil-A. Their service is exceptional. It is just absolutely incredible. And we get the chance today to talk to one of the people behind the scenes that helps the Chick-fil-A that we interact with on a regular basis perform
Best
at a high
chicken in the world.
capacity. And so we're looking forward to that. Danny Curry, welcome to Leading Adam.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. See what I did there? You made me sound way fancier than I am, but I'm so grateful that I get to be a part of an awesome organization and what we're doing in the Noblesville area, and excited to share with you whatever I can.
Yeah, well, I know titles, aren't your thing. They're not my thing. And we talk about the necessity of them. And how it facilitates openness really for the public. It really has nothing to do with the internal folks. But yeah, having you on, it was a no-brainer when we were looking at who are we going to invite to join us in Season 2. It was a no-brainer because the organization that you're with, not Chick-fil-A, but the franchise group that you're with is doing something so unique. And the owner-operator there has such an incredible heart for what you do, and we 100% support that, and it's made a world of difference. So before we get to talk about Sam and what he chose to do, tell us a little bit about Danny Curry.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate what you're saying about Sam Hartman, my boss, and we actually go way back. We grew up in Southern Indiana together, so that was our connection. So that's part of what brought me to Chick-fil-A, was just a connection with Sam. And once you get to know Sam, you realize once he makes a connection, it's a connection for life.
Yeah.
And that's something I really respect about him and admire about him. But so I grew up in Southern Indiana, was educated in East Tennessee, and now live in Central Indiana. So I've got a degree in redneck, pretty good, and love people, love the Midwest. And so this is a good fit for me where I'm at, working with people. I did 20 years of local church ministry before I transitioned over to working in the marketplace with Chick-fil-A.
Wow.
And one of the ideas Sam had in bringing me on board was he wanted to have somebody who could specialize in pouring into leaders. And he knew that was my background. That was my experience. And for me, it was a natural fit because I just saw it as taking ministry that I'd been doing in the church and doing ministry in the marketplace. And so that's what I get to do every day. And it's the joy of my life, really.
Wow. That's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
So from pastor to
Chicken slinger.
chicken slinger. Yeah.
But really people development is the
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
helping people grow. And at the heart of ministry is that idea of people figuring out who they are and who they want to be and coming alongside of them and helping them get there, which
Yeah.
is what I get to do every single day.
So Sam is the owner operator for the franchise group that you work with, which is, again, one of the highest performing groups in the entire world for Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. And we've talked before, and I know that you subscribe to the idea that part of that is because of Sam's willingness to create a unique model for how he was going to operate his group. What is unique about the way he chose to set up his organization?
Yeah. Sam, first and foremost, his personal mission has always been to help people get from here to there. That's what he called it. We took that and made it a little more poetic as our group's mission statement. So our group's mission statement is to wholeheartedly influence others to climb mountains. So you'll notice there's nothing in there about making money or even selling chicken, because ultimately we realize we're not in the chicken business. We're in the people business. And that's Sam's heart. And that's what we've organized our efforts around, and why he invests in someone like me to be on the team is I get to specialize, like my full-time job is pouring into people. And so Sam is people over profits, people over process, even putting the people first is, Sam's approach. And so with that, he understands that a lot of that rises and falls on leadership. So if leaders get better, everybody gets better. And so that was what he took a chance on 5.5 years ago. And he seems to be pretty happy with the results. I still have a job, so that's good.
He's still rolling with it.
We're being pretty successful. That has way less to do with me and a whole lot more to do with the awesome people I get to work with. But it's just a very unique opportunity to be able to look at people. Like when I meet with them, we sit down in the store and all the wonderful organized chaos of Chick-fil-A is going on around us, and people are getting their nuggets, and people are flying through the drive-thru, and all the things that are happening in our world. And I'll be sitting across the table from a leader, and we're spending 30 minutes. And here's what I tell them almost every single time, just to frame it. I say, Sam is paying me right now, and he is paying you right now to sit here, and neither one of us is selling chicken. And he's doing this so that you can get better.
Yeah.
And that's what we're here to do. So please make sure he gets a good return on that investment.
Wow,
and that's what
really
we
good.
do. That's what we do to try to frame up that, to make that 30 minutes really important.
Yeah, I was curious, I've been to so many Chick-fil-A's around the country on road trips, and it's like our destination. Great service, really consistently, almost wherever we've been. What do you think? How does that show up as the differentiator with those specific locations because of the work that you get to do there? What is that? Yeah, what does that look like?
It's incredibly
Customers
consistent, right? Like you get a similar experience everywhere you go. You can feel that consistency. There's a couple of things. I think it's because we're value driven. Like there's this consistency in the values that we have. And one of those values is, and this is counterintuitive until you really sit and contemplate it, you would think we put all of our emphasis on guest experience. That's what you would think. And while that is an important priority, it's based on the foundation of team member experience. So we want to make sure that we are demonstrating the kind of care and the kind of attention to our team that we expect them to provide for the guests.
Yeah.
And so what we found is if we can make their experience a wonderfully delightful experience, if it really is their pleasure to work there, then you can find that they give that quality service to people. And when they say my pleasure at the end, which is probably what we're the most known for, besides the delicious nuggets, is saying my pleasure. And if you do happen to, in the 1 out of 1,000 times, forget to say it, people are personally offended by it. They really are. They're like, you didn't say my pleasure. Like, like they take it very personally. Yeah. But when they say that at the end of the interaction, you can feel it, that it's genuine. And that's because their whole experience, obviously we're not perfect. It's not, some people get the wrong idea. They're like, it's like church camp, and we're all, circling up in the back and singing Kumbaya before we come out and serve people. It's not that. It's a bunch of imperfect people. But at the heart, there is that idea of emphasizing the care for the individual, and that starts with the team and it radiates out from there. And I think that's why maybe you see that genuine customer experience happening in the stores.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And it's one of the reasons, really, Danny, that you and I get along so well, because it is the premise that my business is built on, is that this idea that you cannot offer that which you first don't possess. And that's what you just described. If Chick-fil-A wants it to be a pleasant experience, a consistent experience for those who are coming to dine, you have to have that first in your team. And it really is an incredible case study, if you will, to kind of say, no, this works, right? You fill the cup of those who work with you,
right? And
they then can in turn pour into those that are coming through to use the service, regardless what the service is. You said it. You're in the people business. You just happen to be serving chicken.
Exactly.
Right. And so another organization could be doing that, but servicing HVAC units. Right.
Yes.
Same concept.
And I think we've stumbled upon, it's not just what we do, it's who we are. And I think that's what matters is, you can go anywhere and you can try to do, like, we don't have to try to hide what we're doing, or like what our recipes might be secret, but like the recipe of customer service isn't. It's right out there for people to see. I think it's obvious to people when they come in the store, but just in case it's not, you're going to see every team member try to make eye contact with you, offer a genuine, warm smile to you. They're going to speak enthusiastically with you, and they're going to try to make it personal by knowing your name, finding out a little bit about you, and then that genuine kind of phrase at the end of my pleasure. But you look at that, to us, that's we call that the core four. And that's part of the consistency, is we have a very specific way that we're training our team to interact with guests, and then we hold them to it. And so that's where the leadership part comes, is the holding you capable of doing those four behaviors. Because if you notice, they're not feelings, they're actions. Yeah. And so new team members sometimes aren't having their most my pleasure kind of day. They just aren't. Right. And I will say, hey, I noticed that you're not smiling. And they will say, as any human would, I don't feel like smiling. And I'll say, I understand that. But when you're on the clock and you're doing this job, it's not about whether you feel like smiling. We've made a commitment to our guests that we're going to smile. Wow. And so it's observable. I'm simply saying, I don't see you smiling. So I need you to smile, because that's what we've promised our guests. And we can't break that trust based off of our feelings, because each guest that comes through is worth us overcoming our feelings to provide what we committed to provide. Yeah. And if we can do that with a smile, then we're going to do it with your Chick-fil-A sauce. We're going to do it with your fries. And that's why our order accuracy numbers are always through the roof. Why people are saying, like, they'll say, did you put my sauce in there? I say, you can always double check. They're like, oh, I trust you, which I always cringe a little bit, because I'm like, that's the one that's not going to have their buffalo sauce, Right. But that idea is, we are going to honor our commitments, whether we feel like it or not, because these are behaviors that are expected. And so the way you wear your uniform, where you have your name tag, and the fact, you make eye contact, you smile, all those things are observable. And so then we have to coach it, right? And we have to stay consistent with the coaching of it.
Are you saying that the items in the organization that are measurable, right? Drive-through time, order accuracy, these kinds of things, are predicated on the commitment to the soft skills and that internal value to say, no, I said I would do this, and so I'm going to be this. I'm going to represent this. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's when you tap into something that is extremely powerful, which is intrinsic motivation. If we can hold you to a rule, but if we can form a relationship of trust, and we say, you trust us for certain things, so we trust you with certain things, and then the person can take ownership of that. Now their smile is yes, they don't feel like smiling, but they're committed to the team to smile.
Yeah.
So they have this trust. And so there's a trust they want to keep, and a trust they want to have, and a trust they want to display. And so I'm not saying every team member would be able to come in here and explain that to you, but that's the culture. That's the water they're swimming in as fish, so to speak. It's the culture that we're trying to develop. And then the engine of that is the coaching that to leaders and, kind of showing them that's what we're doing, and then holding them capable of doing it, and then helping them do it. Because once you transition from team member to leader, it's a difficult transition for our people. So think about this, most of our workers, it's their first leadership role of any kind. You immediately change what shirt you wear. So if you're in our store and you see the red shirts, there's Star Trek jokes we can make, but we're not going to make them. But you see all the red shirts and you go, okay, those are team members. And then the minute you see a different color shirt, you're like, okay, that must be a leader of some kind. So we're like, it's obvious. Like you're expected to operate at a different level, right? And these, 2 weeks ago, they were working with their friends. And now they have to lead them.
Yes.
And that is a
difficult.
That is a very difficult transition. And that's where our coaching comes in. That's where our leadership development comes in. And one of my colleagues came up with a great phrase. We actually have a little study that we do with the leaders when they first make that move. And it's called from buddy to boss. And not that they're really the boss of the place, but that idea of like you're taking on leadership and you're their buddy and now you're their boss. And how is that different? And that's a conversation that I engage in pretty early on with our shift leads and all, because that's really, they go from being a team member to a trainer to a closing leader, an opening lead, and then a shift lead. And those are sometimes 17, 18-year-old kids that are responsible for operating this multi-million-dollar business in that window of time where thousands of people are coming through to get their meal for their families. And that's a lot of responsibility on them. And they were just somebody's buddy and now they're their boss.
Right.
And so we can talk a little bit about what all that takes, but that's the unique challenge that we face in that environment and what we're trying to help them grow into and develop as leaders.
Go ahead.
And I've noticed you've used the word capable and not accountable. Tell me about that.
It's a personal conviction of mine that's kind of semantics, but it does set a tone. So early on in my job at Chick-fil-A, the only leadership conversation I heard people talking about was accountability. And it was all negative and they shied away from it. And they just felt like they needed to get people in trouble. They had to hold them to a standard and then they were in trouble and they documented them and all. And while all those processes are necessary within organizations at some level, that's not what we necessarily have to lead with. And so just changing the language, change the mindset. And I said, how about instead of talking about holding people accountable, what if we talk about holding people capable?
Yeah.
And that was something that I heard someone say once. I've long since forgotten who it was, so now it's mine. That's what
well, we're going to give you credit for it.
But don't, because it's not me. It's probably something Abraham Lincoln put on the internet. But
maybe stole from Jesus.
Right. I picked it up somewhere. But holding people capable is the way we talk about the responsibility of a leader to set clear expectations and then consistently coach to those expectations. And when a leader approaches it as, I've got to go tell them they did something wrong, they shy away from it. But if we frame it with, go and tell them you believe they can do it right.
Yeah, right.
It just is like,
from our lens, I do coaching, I do work with organizations, and what we process, and I was going to ask the same question, so thank you for grabbing that. Holding them capable, the way that we process it is break the word down. Accountability is accounting for their ability. Instead of processing their failure, process their capacity to be successful.
Yeah.
And that is a game changer because you have spoken to the human in this. And that's where I'd like to hit. I really want to get back to this idea of people over profit and talk about that in a minute. But before we get there, so much of what you're describing, Danny, is that you're investing in the human experience, which we, as we've outlined in season 1, what we mean by that is we have a focus on the fundamental human need of belonging, vulnerability, and shared purpose. And what you're describing is that when you invest in that, it is a natural human response then to then return that to the group to which you belong and have shared purpose and feel safe. And what you're doing is then holding yourself capable to achieve the expectation. And those then become the technical measurable outcomes.
Yes.
Right. But so many organizations put the goals on the outcome instead of the behavior. You're not doing that. And I think that makes this really unique. And I love what you're talking about, which is why I wanted to have you on to say, what does this look like in an environment that is exceptionally fast paced? And this is the thing that I'd say pushback that I get when talking to general society business leaders, like, oh, that works in your white collar world, or that works in this environment. Higher education, for example, it's a slower pace. But we're talking about one of the most fast paced environments that you could possibly have. So do you have any data just to quantify the pace? I mean, how many customers are you guys processing through in a day?
I wish I did. I'm sorry I don't.
That's okay.
If I said something, I could be wildly inaccurate. What I will say is...
So about 1 million.
Yeah. What I would say is, go to any Chick-fil-A, especially come to ours in Noblesville, look at the drive-thru, count the cars. It's way more people than you would ever get behind in a line at any drive-thru. And yet you do it because you're like, they'll get me through. And
Sure.
we have screens, obviously, like any restaurant does, and it has a timer on it. And our screens are green, yellow, red. We try to stay out of the red. That's set at a very specific time. So what I don't want you to get the impression is that we only try to operate based off of these soft skills or these relationships. We have very specific quantifiable results we're looking for that are all tied to key metrics, just like any other business.
Exactly.
Our approach to getting there is to just emphasize and prioritize the people who are doing it. So the outcomes, it's weird, right? Like you go and push people for outcomes, or you go and you care for people and you develop them, and then they produce these outcomes that you could have just worn them out and pushed for. And so what we try to be sensitive to, and it's not exact science, so there's some art to this too, but is we could run a shift and get the results we wanted, but if the toll on the people, we'd say, hey, we can't keep doing it like that every time because the cost on the people was too high, because you can see it in their morale, or you can see it in just their exhaustion. But you do that from time to time. Sometimes you do have to push hard. Sometimes you have to, you don't quite have all the people. 3 people called off. Right. You still got to provide this amazing service, and you're doing 3 positions now, and all the things that you have to overcome. But we have to be sensitive to the human factor of that and the cost. And that's a hidden cost.
Right.
It shows up eventually on your profit and loss statement in retention and in how much you're spending but that's such a trailing thing. You have to have some kind of system in place that catches it. Our system is 2 things. One is we have end of shift reports that our people, that our leaders fill out every time. Mostly they're mundane. Mostly they're like, there were this many mac and cheeses left. There were this many, chicken nuggets. There was but part of it is, how did the shift go? How are you feeling about it? And there are yellow flags that come up that then people like myself or their supervisors will follow up with, so that we can catch it before it becomes detrimental to their mental health or their physical health or their experience as a leader. So that's one of our processes. The second one is my basic conversation with leaders is built on what we call a personal development plan, which is probably similar to anything that you've experienced in business or whatever. Our approach to it is just a set of questions that I ask. Some are big picture leadership questions. What are your goals? What are you trying to do in life? Where are you trying to go? What do you love about your job? What do you not like about your job? But embedded in there is a question that says, what do you want your supervisor to know about how they can care for you better and how they can help you win at work?
Love it.
They know, everyone knows that I'm going to copy that and give it to their supervisor.
Yeah.
So if they haven't quite been able to verbalize something to their supervisor, now when they meet with me, they have to write it out.
Yeah.
Then we talk about it. And this is what's really cool, and this is when you know it's working. If I am slow, which sometimes I am in the administrative side of my job because I'm so people oriented, so the tasks sometimes are like, if I'm slow in getting that information to supervisors and they know that their direct report met with me, I'll get a text message or an email that says, hey, where's that PDP from them? I want to see it, because they know how valuable that intel is.
Right.
So that they can direct their leadership energy right where the person is saying they need it. It's weird, right? But it's like, if you want to know how to lead somebody better, just ask them.
Yeah.
what'll work for
Exactly.
you. And they go, oh, this. And you go, okay, I can give you that. The idea that you're supposed to somehow be this leadership guru that's read enough books or listened
Right.
to enough podcasts to become this
Yes.
awesome expert and miss the idea of like, why don't you just ask them what they
Right.
want?
Yeah.
And it's the easiest person in the world to lead is to lead someone where they want to go, which you can't always do. But if you find out, like, rarely does
Great
the person
point.
ever say, I wish they would let me slack off or just not hold me to such a high standard.
Well, no one aspires to mediocre.
Yeah.
No one aspires to that.
At least not on a piece of paper when they got to
No.
meet with a leadership guy.
Yeah. The reality, yeah, sometimes, right? I want to be mediocre. I want to be lazy. I just want to burn the day. But no one aspires to that to be the sentence of their life.
No, and they feel
No.
yucky if they do it.
Right.
They might slack for a day or two, but they honestly will just feel blah.
Yeah.
And
So
nobody wants that.
You're going to hate this direction change, but we're
Great.
going to lean into it because you said something that we've got to come back now and really talk about you and your role, which is why you're not going to like this part.
Okay.
Because I know you don't like to talk about yourself, but the reality is you are the artist in this. You said there is an art to this.
Yeah.
And what you were saying that in reference to was there's an art to blending the tactical parts of the job, the pieces. You got to get chicken out, right? If you don't get chicken out the door, people stop coming.
Yeah.
That has to happen. And then there's this care and attending to the humanity. But you aren't leading every one of these individuals
Right.
across 3 locations.
Right.
You aren't doing that. Your role is different. So I want to start first by asking, how is your role evidence of people over profit? And then I want to talk about your role specifically. But
Okay.
let's start there. How is your role evidence of that?
Well, that wasn't near as vile as I thought it was going to be. That was
it's
a fun.
getting
That was a
worse.
fine.
Don't worry,
meeting.
I'm just warming.
So my job, and I get to specialize in leading leaders. And so Sam's idea was, instead of having a leadership coach just for him, what if he could bring a leadership coach, like an executive coach or something like that,
Yep.
on staff to pour into all the leaders at every level? And so that's what I get to do. And so that means I'm leading the leaders who are leading leaders who are leading people. And that's a whole different thing, right? So when you move from being an individual contributor to a team leader, it goes from your unique individual strengths and ability to pull off a spot in our game plan to how did the whole flow of the shift go and how did you help make everyone better at their spots, to how did you help the person who's setting the game plans who are helping everybody, how are you making them better? That trickle down leadership effect. And so my challenge is I don't run around and develop every person. I get to meet with people and emphasize their part in developing people. And when people realize in leadership that they're not just there to get results,
Mm-hmm.
but they're there to steward these relationships well so that we get results, it changes the game for them. And it also exposes, you mentioned vulnerability before, and it's okay in our organization to say, I don't know how to do that. And I say, well, of course you don't, because you've never done it before. And we've done it a long time and we still don't know how to do it, but we're going to learn together. And so I get to ask questions like, what's your biggest challenge right now? Like, what are you struggling with the most? And the first time they'll give me an easy one, like, I'm struggling with how to set up my game plan, and it's like, okay. And honestly, they know more about it than I do, which is awesome. And I'll say, what are you doing? Who are you leaning into? And like, what resources do you have? I don't just say, here's how you set up your game plan, because I don't actually know.
But they don't trust themselves
Right.
in what they know, and you get the opportunity
to just
to
reinforce.
let them say it to
Exactly.
someone who's not going to judge them, because they might know that you don't know either.
Exactly.
So, well, let me say this. I'm going to kick to Erika to ask a question. What I love about this, and perhaps we need to consider having Sam on, because I know the questions that are in my mind you can't answer. But when he made that decision, I know that there was an investment without an ROI in the beginning. He carved out a place in his overhead to say, this matters, and it won't be measurable for a little while.
Yeah.
That's a conversation I'd love to have with Sam, but that's the evidence, right? And so many organizations say, oh, we're people over profit. I'm calling BS and shenanigans on that. Most of it is just really good marketing language. They're not doing it in the reality of their job. And I think that's why having you on is so exceptional here, because it's fast paced and we get to benefit from that result of what you're doing, teaching leaders to develop people. That is your role. So, maybe we need to consider having Sam on sometime. But
that'd be great.
What are you wondering?
Yeah, I was just curious. I would imagine, like, when you first came into the organization within that kind of a role, you're starting to meet with everyone. And was there any pushback from the team? And maybe the better question is, what pushback did you receive? And
I mean, multiple pushbacks. Everyone. The nice thing is, they had no idea what a leadership development person does at first. Sure. So they just would find this meeting on their schedule. And the first time every time I had a first time meeting with someone, they thought they were in trouble.
Right.
Because you don't meet with leaders unless you're in trouble, and that's in a good, healthy organization, honestly. And they still had that instinct. So almost all of them would say, well, this wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, and then they learned that I'm not the meeting they should be scared of, that I'm the meeting that's like for them. And once that flipped, that was good. So that was on the individual level. The leader pushback was, well, that's your job. So when I would say, how come we're struggling to hold this person capable of doing XYZ, they'd say, well, that's your job. And I go, oh. And so then I realized because I got this title, they assumed it was entirely my responsibility to develop leaders. And because they weren't seeing me necessarily scooping fries or making milkshakes, they're like, well, what are we paying you for if you're not, if you're not doing that? And so we had to learn how it was a partnership and how, no, I'm going to help you do that. I'm going to help you push past whatever variables or barriers you have that are in the way of keeping you from being the leader that your people need you to be. And I'm going to circle back with that person after you hold them capable, and I'm going to see how that landed with them. Yeah. And I'm going to be able to come back to you and say, what did you try to say to them? I tried to say this. Here's what they heard. Did you know that's what they heard? Did you check for understanding? Did you follow back up with them? No. Okay. Well, you need to have a second meeting because you guys aren't on the same page. And if you can do that enough times, the level of tension and toxicity, I think that's a word, that is in your organization goes down. And the level of productivity and positivity goes up. Yeah. And that's an environment where you can thrive. Yeah. And that's what that's kind of I'm like organizational health really is one of my leading, responsibilities. Yeah. And that requires me to work both with the patients and the doctors. I got to work with the team that we're leading and the people who are trying to lead them. And that's kind of our secret sauce, I guess. Yeah.
And so much of what you said really boils down to so much communication and that consistency in the communication and the follow-ups. And, I've heard before and how it goes, like if there's not communication, then one or both sides, they start to imagine the story that's happening. Right. And that's when you get all that toxicity and having that breaks down. So that's so interesting.
I was thinking about what you just described, the process, and Patrick Lencioni outlines that process in his book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Yes. In the base layer, right? Imagine a food pyramid. I know you're familiar with this book, that base layer being trust. Yes. And that's, as you're talking about that in your first initial meetings with them, is helping them understand, no, this is about you. This is for you. This isn't to browbeat you or this. It's to help you have a place to feel like you're being invested in. And you built that trust and then helped them see that next layer was conflict. Yes. How do you get them to engage healthy conflict? And once you do that long enough, commitment happens, which is that next layer. That's what you just described. It made me think of a conversation we had some time ago, because we had the privilege of being involved in part of a third-party development, which has its value all its own, but that's not what today's about. But when one of our conversations, you had talked about some of the most powerful coaching, investing, mentoring is shoulder to shoulder. Yeah. So talk about that. What does that mean? And how did you help the leaders that you're developing understand, yes, I have different capacity than you, but I can never achieve what you're doing because I'm not shoulder to shoulder. Talk about that a little bit.
Exactly. A 30-minute check-in with someone cannot replace 40 hours working side by side with them on shift.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
I mean, it would take me several million years to catch up on some kind of chart with all of our leaders, and I'm not going to live that long. And I am kind of the old guy at the store, so they know I'm on borrowed time as it is.
Good.
But so there's a couple of things with that. That shoulder to shoulder leadership, we call it gritty leadership. And in our organization, it's absolutely essential. We can't have leaders that are just sitting off in an office somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we literally don't have an office. Like,
Right.
Our office is in the restaurant.
The playland.
And our boardroom is in the rest. It is there at front counter or, in the back of house. So lots of conversations have to be quick, which means they have to be clear. You can't really, you can't just sit and be vague or like hem-haw around. You just kind of have to say it. And depending on the type of conversation, you may have to pull somebody off a position and have a quick talk. We always say you can always circle back around at the end and then have that follow up, and check for understanding, make sure we're on the same page. And then there is a process by which you document. Now, this was a cool change for our organization. I don't know other organizations what their process is, but our documentation process to where somebody gets what might called written up used to be, this is what they did wrong. This is this was their violation, and I assigned them points or whatever.
Yeah, right.
What we found is when we would follow up, we'd say, "Did you have a conversation with them?" They'd say, "Nope." So now they've just tattled on them or told them, and the person still doesn't even know they did anything wrong. So we thought, well, they at least should know. Then we realized this, and this is how we changed the game. We said, this documentation is no longer about what they did wrong. This documentation is the coaching conversation you had. So you are writing out the coaching conversation you had. If you did not have a coaching conversation, you don't have a documentation.
Not a violation.
You don't have a documentation to submit. Until you've had the coaching conversation, you are documenting your coaching conversation. Because if you have the same coaching conversation over and over and over again, we know we have somebody that needs a different kind of intervention. And that was a huge game changer for us.
Yeah.
A mindset thing that I had to help establish, and I don't really know where this emerged, but it just came out, is that struggle that people had. I think it was part of that buddy to boss thing, but also just, I think all leaders struggle with it regardless of it, is that fear of conflict.
Sure.
And what we had to do, just like holding people capable, what we ended up talking about, which I think changed the temperature on it and helped people have a new way of thinking about it and leaning into it, was we would say, you have to decide what you're going to care about. You can either care about the person or you can care about what they think about you, but you can't care about both those things at the same time. And the thing that's holding you back is you say, I don't want them to feel bad. But what you really are saying is, I don't want them to not like me or to be unhappy with me. And so we would have to say, this is a commitment to care about them and their development. And so we would start saying, why are you struggling to have that conversation? And I'd say, well, why don't you care about them enough to go tell them the truth?
Right.
And then people are like, I need to go,
it's
to
human
do that.
nature, right? We make it about ourselves.
Right. Of course. And that's what I say.
I'm
I'm the same way. And that's what I tell them. It's like, but what if in every conversation we have, I'm sitting here with my primary thought being, I hope they like me after we're done talking here. Like, it automatically makes it more about me than it does about you. And this needs to be about you. And they go like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible. I do think that one of the biggest barriers to effectively getting information and consistency is this idea of, I don't know how to give you feedback effectively. And as long as I feel incompetent in that, I can't do it.
Yes.
And then the other barrier, as you just described, is not making it about yourself, right? Recognizing what the value of the outcome will be.
I used to ask leaders about feedback they've been giving people. And I've changed the question now. I ask them, how are you asking for feedback? Because we've found that leaders who ask for feedback 100%. And get a lot of feedback are much more equipped to offer feedback.
Right.
And so this is a daunting thing. And so the way we stepped into that is, instead of saying, go to a person and say, how am I doing at leading you? Which they're going to lie to you maybe, or tell you what they think you want to hear is a nicer way to say it. I said, what if you just went and asked them about their experience? So walk up next to them when they're on a position and say, what do you think about this position? What do you like about it? Is there anything that I could do that make it better for you?
Yeah.
I said, now you're asking them about their experience. You're still getting feedback. I said, what if they tell you, I get so stressed out when I do this job? I was like, you could pull them off that position, which wouldn't be the best thing. Or you can ask them another question. Why do you feel so stressed out?
Yeah.
What is it that's holding you back? And they may say, I'm doing drinks and my ice keeps running out. Oh, well, what's the best practice for asking for more ice? And, what have you done about it? And all that. I was like, now as a leader, you know how to help them right where they're the most, they're most stressed. And if you're a leader like that, who cares enough to find out to each person how their experience is going, you're a leader they can trust, and that's a leader they'll be able to tell more things to.
Yeah.
So that's how we stepped into it.
So I want to give Erika a chance to ask another question. We have about 5 minutes. Anything you want to ask? I've got one more question for Danny that I think you can bring value to our listeners. But anything you want to ask before I do?
Well, I was with such a young crew. You mentioned you're the old guy around there.
Yeah, way old.
We're in good company. It's fine. But yeah, I mean, with transitioning leaders from being the buddy to the boss, what are some like really practical ways and just in terms of that? Because I know that's a common, challenge in an organization and working with so many young people. Yeah. What have you?
Yeah. So in asking questions on the PDP, one of the things we realized was their challenge was they're like, I don't know how to lead my friends, was basically what they were saying.
Right.
And so what that did was it opened up a great conversation I got to have with each leader. And I'm really glad you asked me this question because I think this can be a powerful insight that people sometimes overlook. And I would say, well, tell me what you think a great friend is. What's a great friend? And they would tell me what a great friend is. And I said, you know what you just described? A great leader.
Right.
So my guess is you maybe weren't as great a friend as you thought you were. And you're just struggling with how to be a great person for these people. And what we would boil it down to is I think at the end of the day, what you really want a great friend to do is tell you the truth. They need to be the person that says, you got a piece of lettuce in your teeth, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's a great friend. And so you need them to tell you the truth and you want them to love you, be there for you no matter what, right? So tell them the truth, be there for you no matter what. I said, that's what we want our leaders to be.
Yeah.
You're clear about our standards, but you say, I'm going to be here to support you and help you get there. I was like, so if you really, I know you say you don't know how to lead your friends, but the reality is you just need to lead them like a great friend would and then be consistent about it. And if you get pushback and they're like, whoa, hey, you can't tell me what to do, we're friends. And then you just have to stay consistent when they say, no, this is the standard. This is why I'm trying to help you get better. And so it's hard in practice, but if you can get that mindset right, and that was what was really helpful. It's fun to sit there and see the light bulb come on every time. They're like, oh, that's true. Yeah. So it's like, I think we have a false dichotomy here that a great friend is this and a great leader is this. And it's like, no, really just be a great person and then take care of the people that you're in relationship with.
Yeah.
So that was incredible.
And say those one more time for all of us.
Yeah.
Just being there for.
Yeah. So I think, to boil it down to it, it's what we say is tell them the truth, love them to death. That's what we say. Tell them the truth, love them to death. So sometimes with our leaders, they'll get stressed out and they'll say, I'm just putting too much pressure on myself. And they'll do this with their hand. They say, I keep holding myself to this standard, but what you're saying is I need to just relax. And you're actually, and I say, no, that's not it. I was like, you think the standard's here. Well, actually, our standard is here. But here's what I want you to know. We're going to care for you and support you to get you there. So it's not about lowering the standard. It's about realizing you're not in it alone.
Yeah.
And we're going to support you. But I don't ever let them I'm like, seriously, we're not lowering the standard so you feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
We're just going to up the support so you can get there.
Yes.
And I think that's powerful.
That extra bit answered the question I was going to ask, which was if you're going to say something to those leaders listening, what would you say? And I think that is the challenge. I think we process this too much as, we're going to become softer. No. We're going to become so much more excellent. The standard of our leadership, the standard and expectation of what we do is going to be so high that it's going to require someone to help us get there. So, gosh, Danny, thank you so much for just this conversation. There's so many good nuggets in this.
Nuggets.
Pun intended. There's so much good in this episode. I knew Danny was going to be incredible.
That's right.
Thank you for joining us.
We ran out of time for you to tell us what the secret ingredient is for the most amazing chicken in the world.
I guess you'll just have to keep coming to our restaurants and enjoying it.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Erika, thank you for a great episode.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Danny.
Of course, it was my pleasure.
My pleasure. Thanks for joining us here at the Leading Adam podcast. We hope you found inspiration and hope to see you again next time. Leave us a comment on YouTube, or if you have an idea for a future episode, let us know that too. You can connect with us at 240solutions.com. Thanks, and we hope to see you again next time.